The Sports Note on YouTube reacting to today's the Browns loss. Let's throw it right up there. Joe Burrow gets his first win against the Browns today, 23-10. Although his performance was not that impressive, the Browns shot themselves in the foot constantly. Uh, m- every aspect of this game. This game honestly should have been a lot bigger of a margin of victory than it was. Cincinnati just outclassed the Browns, uh, both on and off the field, in more ways than one. Let's actually get the let's get the ticker up there. Deshaun Watson did have himself a pretty good game, 26 of 42, 276 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Although everyone's going to talk about the fact that they finally got a touchdown with him manning the offense, unlike last week against the Texans, where all of their points came from defense and special teams. In terms of getting into the end zone, they did knock out a couple of field goals last week. You could definitely see also there was a period where at the end of the first half that kicker Cade York was extremely upset that he could not get an opportunity to kick a 67-yard field goal, which we all know that Cade York's got the leg for. But let's also be honest, on turf in that cold weather, he was going to have to line drive it. That ball was probably going to get blocked. And with 4 seconds left, the Browns were lucky to be able to get what they wanted to. And a lot of people are going to say, hey, um, he threw for 276 yards. Yeah, that's all fine, well, and dandy. Problem is, it was all in it. The bulk of that was in garbage time or after they had already fallen behind. This was a scoreless game up until Cincinnati scored with, I want to say, about 9 minutes left in the first half. And then the Browns end up getting a field goal, and then Cincinnati rattles off. Cincinnati gets a touchdown on piss poor tackling, very very late in the quarter, and then comes out in the third quarter, and Trent Irwin gets a 45-yard bomb from Joe Burrow after everyone bit on the flea flicker with Mixon going up the middle. The touchdown from Watson to make it 20-10 was a 13-yarder to David Njoku, who continues to prove that he is one of the better tight ends in football. And then the Bengals finish out the scoring on a 30-yard field goal from Evan McPherson in the opening seconds of the fourth quarter, and there was your final margin of victory in front of the 66,000 plus at Paycor Stadium down in Cincinnati, where the Browns and Bengals split the season series. Remember, the Browns had a victory with momentum going into the bye week, and then proceeded to go out and get crushed the 2 weeks out of that by. I know there was I think it was right out of the gate with the Miami game, right out of the bye week where they got drubbed. The fact that Nick Chubb had only one more rushing yard than Deshaun Watson tells you everything you need to know. This was not an instance of the Browns being out of sync and trying to actually get back in sync, or the Browns shooting themselves in the foot. This is Kevin Stefanski trying to force the offense and to tailor it around Watson to be able to knock the rust off for a guy who hasn't played in 700 days. Oh, yeah. Still not going to answer any questions as to why you missed 700 days. And shame on, the national broadcasts and everything for saying that he is out, but don't say why he was forced to sit. Although they did actually, there were some, anti-Watson signs in the stands, and naturally all over social media, Cincinnati fans taking shots at Watson in their tailgates, very reminiscent of early in the season with the Browns on the road while Watson was still suspended for his sexual misconduct, sexual assault misconduct. But um, it's to the point now where with Watson, with some of his reads, um, it's not just rust, it's corrosion. I actually think we have a visual of Watson. There you can see that's basically Deshaun Watson's arm right now, um, his throwing arm. So we can actually see just how bad uh, he is with regards to um, getting in sync and throwing all over the field. He did spread the ball around pretty well. Was not as low on his throws as last week, but a lot of the decision making was not there. You could definitely see he was starting to be able to make some of the throws that Brissett could not. The fact that this loss was on this loss was more on coaching than anything with and you can actually see not that big of of an issue with time of possession, although that actually is going to show the Browns with nearly a 4-minute advantage when Cincinnati's getting 45-yard bombs on flea flickers, where two of your defensive backs bit hard on it, and we're going to cover that here in just a moment. But the Browns were penalized 9 times for 56 yards. I'm sorry, 9 times for 98 yards. Jamar Chase, as you can see on the bottom of the screen, had 119 receiving yards on his own. That's bad discipline. That's bad coaching. You can say whatever you want about, the referees basically trying to hand the Browns penalties to be able to keep drives alive for Cincinnati in that first half. But it was and it also negated at least one, if not, I think maybe 2 sacks on the with penalties end up offsetting. But the Bengals ended up having on one of their scoring drives 2 penalties where 2 defensive penalties on the Browns that ended up keeping that drive alive when it had no business getting there. The Browns could not get off the field, and that was actually. That was also part in mind with the 2 defensive backs that I am going to call out by name, and that's Grant Delpit and Denzel Ward. Both of them were horrible again. Delpit bit extremely hard and on the run, playing 15 yards off the ball in the back end of the secondary on Mixon, and then there was absolutely no over the top. With the flea flicker that ended up going to Trent Irwin, where he was so over the top that he had 10 yards easily on Denzel Ward, and Ward actually kind of playing out there on his own did no favors. A very forgettable game for both, and it's becoming increasingly more evident that Grant Delpit is going to be a high pick bust, and Denzel Ward is not a lead. He's an overpaid hack at this point. He is not locked down. He is not. He can't even really cover all that well. He doesn't have an interception. I think he might have one interception, although this entire team is lacking in interceptions for the entire season. With the late yardage efficiency, you could see both teams were very poor. Certainly, one just above, one just below 33% on third down. But let's pay attention to that 3 of 6 on fourth down. And the first one of those was the opening drive of the game, where you've got 4th and 1 in Cincinnati territory. You bring Jacoby Brissett out, who led the NFL in first down attempts on fourth down inside of 2 yards. And you actually had him throw it to the end zone where it was not caught. You need a yard to keep the drive alive. You're slowly but surely grinding the Bengal defense down at that point, and you decide to go for it all when you only need a yard, even though everyone and their mother knew exactly what was coming. You got Chubb, you got Hunt, you take Watson out, and you go to Brissett with their proficiency on getting that 1 yard, and you actually decide to throw deep. That was Kevin Stefanski getting cute. The 9 penalties for 96 yards, that was also absolutely atrocious coaching and discipline, where everything has gotten away from Stefanski. It's gotten away from, we all know it was off the rails, and then some with Joe Woods, with how absolutely porous this defense has been all year. You also had a drive where Cincinnati had to punt, and you had a player run into the kicker where they called a personal foul. So you had penalties there as well. It was all facets of the game. You had holding penalties. You had false start penalties. You had illegal procedure penalties. You had running into the kicker penalties. You had defensive holding penalties. You had a big pass interference penalty that extended a drive and was a decent sized pickup. I want to say it was 17, 18 yards in there. And yet the overall total yardage, Cincinnati just ends up having the edge. Neither team gets to 400, as you can see, but the Browns only rushing for 71 yards as a team, with Chubb, Hunt, and now you add Watson into that fold, with Chubb only gaining 34 yards on 16 carries, and then Watson getting 33 yards himself on scrambles. This is what Browns fans should have been afraid of. Is Deshaun Watson's skill set is better than Baker Mayfield, and I'm not going to turn this into a Baker versus Deshaun argument, because as we all know, in terms of class and sustainability, Watson is more primed and talented with his physical attributes, but he will never replace the intangible of Baker Mayfield, and the best ability is availability. And Watson ended up missing 11 games, also missed all of last season, whereas Baker, for being inactive, I guess I am going to turn this into Baker versus Deshaun Watson for a couple of minutes here. Baker comes out on literally 1 day's worth of practice and engineers a game-winning drive for the defending Super Bowl champion Rams on Thursday night against the Raiders, going 98 yards. That's definitely something Deshaun Watson did not do, with much better talent. Again, and if you compare the Raiders defense against the Bengals defense, as it stands right now, the Bengals are 9-4. The Raiders are under 500, and neither the Raiders or the Rams are going to the playoffs this year, which means the Rams are going to be the first team in recent memory where they're going to win a Super Bowl, and then they're not even going to be able to qualify for the playoffs to defend their title. They're going to have to go on a significant run with Matt Stafford essentially out for the year. They've got no Cooper Kupp, and you're going to see some wholesale changes out there at SoFi. Whereas now, yes, the Rams won the Super Bowl, but you're going to see the Chargers be the premier team in the playing in that stadium. The aspect of Watson being able to pull the ball down and run, or playing a little RPO, does not work in this division. We actually saw that Tyler Huntley got knocked out for the Ravens, so now they're going to be down to a third-string quarterback after Lamar Jackson got hurt late in the game last week. And that's the risk you run with a quarterback who can pull down and take off like that, is that when they get into open field, they're so used to kind of taking hits that even if it's in the pocket, it amplifies their fragility. I don't want to, and that's a bad term to use considering how large and strong these guys are now, as opposed to 10 to 15 years ago, even 20, or even 20 years ago when I was growing up. But it's something that every hit gets amplified more because they're putting themselves out there in the open and leaning with their head, as opposed to trying to slide down a little bit more. But we all know that one key hit, they're done for the year. Season goes up in flames, and who knows if they're what their availability or adjustments going to be for the following year. The Browns actually going for that, essentially not trying to push the pile or whatnot and get that first down on the opening drive, swung the game to where Joe Burrow has his first win against the Cleveland Browns in, I want to say it's in 6 tries. Um, and then with the Browns having to host the Ravens next week at First Energy Stadium, that who knows if they've still, there might still be tire tracks on the turf downtown here in Cleveland after that debacle. But it's something where, yeah, you don't have an all-pro, and then you've also don't have a very capable backup, but you still have on offense, but you still have to be able to go out and do something against that against the defense. And the Ravens have have an extremely good defense, and always have and always will with the way that they're coached up. They're not going anywhere anytime soon, and this is where some people were thinking after that win, if Deshaun Watson comes out and has any sort of continuity, the Browns could go on a run and maybe win, 5 of the last 6. Certainly, you could make an argument for at least 4. And now you actually have to wonder, after losing this one and getting and that 13-point spread was not as small. It was not necessarily a 2-score game, because the Browns knew that you knew just by watching this game, they were going to shoot themselves in the foot on every opportunity they could. But it's also something that, what are they going to do against the Ravens? You still actually have to go to Pittsburgh, even though they're a mess. We've actually seen with their backs against the wall when going into Pittsburgh at the end of the year, they basically lay down and die. Except for, then again, when they went to their playoff year a couple of years ago, Pittsburgh rested everybody, having the division sewn up, and that game was here during the 2020 COVID year, so Pittsburgh didn't have to contend with the crowd. Pittsburgh was actually kind of hoping to lose that game. This way, they could actually beat up on the lowly Browns in the playoffs, and we all know how that went. But it's Kevin Stefanski. These last 4 games are an audition for his job. People were ready to give Stefanski a pass, thinking that he and who is this? I will get that later. They will actually get he'll get a full season next year with Watson and that offense, but they've shown with his perpetuity over the last 2 years to go for it and choke on 4th down, leave points on the board. It's not even going to make a difference at this point, because they're going to need to make some form of change in that coaching staff. You're not going to bring back Joe Woods next year to coach that defense with some of the talent that you have. You could actually see something where this entire coaching staff gets blown up if it finishes that poorly. Mike Prefer, the special teams has actually played better the last couple of weeks, but it doesn't excuse for the atrocities from earlier in the year. And it's not like how the defense was last year, where they started off absolutely terrible and then finished very strong towards the end of the year, and you just didn't get any help out of your offense. Stefanski's going to have to. The only way I would feel Stefanski should keep his job is give up the play calling to Alex Van Pelt, and he's also got to finally let Joe Woods go, which Stefanski won't fire a coach in the middle of the year. But you've got 4 games left at this point. You're not going anywhere. Everyone is now auditioning for their jobs for 2023. Let me know what you guys think. I will be back probably sometime tonight or sometime tomorrow with a new edition of the Sports Note. We're going to talk a little Army Navy. We've got the final Wise Guys episode of the year coming up this coming Saturday night at 9. If any of you follow my co-host Mike on YouTube or Twitter, he had his baseball hot stove with our Wise Guys Elite brethren, Alex from Row 7. The invite went out to Alex last night. We're gonna see about bringing a few other people on that may not have actually been on with the Wise Guys before. Certainly have been on with Mike. I'm actually going to be cutting some video for what we like to call the Wise Guys Off the Rails, which are shorts, and you've seen a couple of those get added. You also have seen that some of the if you follow the Wise Guys YouTube page, and I would certainly suggest that you do so if you have not, and that can be found by going to youtube.com/ at the Wise Guy Sports Show. We've started taking some of the, and we're certainly hopeful to have this done by the end of the year. We're taking some of the videos off of our individual pages and now migrating and re-uploading them to the official Wise Guys YouTube channel. First of all, it frees up space on our page, and secondly, it's not a sports note production. It's not a Big Regan on Sport production anymore. It's a Wise Guys production where it was just hosted on one page or the other. And we're gonna have that done by the end of the year. But we're also going back and reclipping, short 1 to 2 minute videos. We've got a few of those that are going to debut from earlier in the year. Those are going to get clipped and kind of counted down on Saturday night. You've seen a couple of them already go up. The three that are out, two of the three that are out there right now are going to be, featured in our top five or certainly honorable mentions on Saturday night. But we're going to have a ton of fun. We're going to talk maybe 10 or 15 minutes worth of sports, and then it's going to be a year-end bash free-for-all long distance Christmas party. You all are invited, and we certainly hope to see you then. So take care, everyone, and I will see you guys here probably within the next 24 hours with the Sports Note.